Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. We begin by praising Allah and sending His peace, blessings, and salutations upon His Messenger Muhammad and all of His messengers from amongst mankind and from amongst the angels. We continue with Surah Al Baqarah. We covered two verses in the previous episode regarding the previous Qibla, also known as the direction of prayer. Of course, just for the purpose of unification in the Muslim Ummah. It does not mean that Allah only exists where we face in the Qibla. Allah is the Lord of the East and the West. So we spoke about how previously the Qibla was Masjid al-Aqsa. That was the Qibla for the entire Meccan period, and then when the Prophet migrated, after the first year and few months, the Qibla was then changed. And this was of course a trial for the people to see if they are willing to accept the messenger and whatever he says and does, and not be taken aback by the influence of the Jews and the hypocrites and the weak amongst the Muslims. Anyway, we continue, okay? Verse 144, Allah says, "Indeed, we have seen the turning of your face towards the heavens. So we shall surely turn you to the Qibla that will please you. So turn your face towards the sacred mosque, and wherever you are, turn your faces towards it. Those who have been given the book know well that this is indeed the truth from their Lord, and Allah is not at all unaware of what they do." Simple verse, as we all know, and as I previously mentioned, and for those who forgot or if I did not mention, understand this: the Prophet really dearly loved Makkah. Okay, when he received his revelation, the first revelation, which was Surah, the opening verses of Surah Al-Iqra, right? It was, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. Read, your Lord is most generous, who taught man by the pen, taught man what he did not know." This was the first revelation. Prophet received it at the age of 40 when he was meditating in the cave Hira. And after you see the revelation, he came back home and his household at that time was his wife Khadija, his four daughters, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulsum, and Fatima. Though Zainab at that time was of course married and living in the house of his son-in-law, Abu As al-Amir, who was not a believer till later on. We will talk about him when the time comes. But his three daughters, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulsum, definitely they were living with the Prophet. Zainab, Ruqayya and Kulsum, the second and third eldest of the Prophet's daughters, were engaged to Abu Lahab, the Prophet's uncle and next door neighbor to Abu Lahab's son. So Abu Lahab is the uncle of the Prophet. So Abu Lahab's sons were engaged to the Prophet's daughters, and of course they were first degree neighbors. Okay, and but they were still just engaged. So they were living with the Prophet, and Fatima is the youngest daughter. She got married much later in Medina, and at the time was of course living with them their free adopted son, Zayd ibn Harisa, at that time known as Zayd, the son of Muhammad, because at that time Allah did not reveal any categorical prohibition regarding adoption. Right? Adoption in Islam, like it's okay if you're not able to have children or you want to take care of orphans. Definitely, adoption is great, but you can't give them your surname. The child must be aware who their real parents are, and if they are not, they are unknown. Don't claim to be their parents. Just tell them, Allah has willed it so that you are an orphan, but we will take you in and we will raise you as one of our own, though you are not one of our own. So Allah says, after this is of course in the Madni period where He categorically prohibits adoption and the consequences thereof through a practical example. I'll quickly give you a brief overview. So Zayd ibn Harisa was given as a slave by Khadija to the Prophet Muhammad, who immediately freed him, and kept him in the house, as somebody who lives with him and somebody who helps him out, like a helper. And a time came when Zayd ibn Harisa was basically from another part of Arabia, and he was kidnapped, taken slave, and sold in the slave market. His original ancestry is from a different place than Makkah. So he was living with the Prophet. At this time, Prophet is not a prophet. He's a normal, regular human being, a regular businessman, of course, with the best conduct anybody can imagine. So Zayd and Muhammad at that time became very, very close, and it was like a father and son relationship, almost. Then Zayd's parents, meaning his dad and his uncle, then officially found out that there's a man, Muhammad, who's a honorable man, and Zayd, our son and nephew, is under his care. So these people came to the Prophet and said, where his Zaid's father and uncle respectively, and we will pay you anything. He was sold as a slave to you, so we will pay his amount, just return him to us. The Prophet said, we don't want your money. If Zaid is willing to go and he wants to go with you, he can go with you. But if he wants to stay with me, I will not let somebody who chooses me let go for any amount of price you may offer me. So anyway, the Prophet told Zaid to come over. He was of course happy to see his father and uncle, but he said, what I've seen in this man in terms of conduct, referring to Muhammad, this is not a regular man, and I'm not ready to part with him. Imagine you're sold as a slave, kidnapped, sold in a slave market, away from your people, away from your community, away from your parents, uncle, everyone. But you come across a man who is so excellent in character that even though you are a foreigner living technically under, as a helper, a worker, a servant, right? You prefer living as a servant, though not a slave, because he was freed, as opposed to going back home to his people. This is the effect the Prophet had on people. His character, his conduct was overwhelmingly good. Everybody around him knew this man is something else, so they wanted his company. So anyway, lo and behold, a Prophet said at that moment when Zaid chose him over his parents, that he went to people of Makkah and he said, Zaid is my son, he is now known as Zaid ibn Muhammad. At that time, adoption, the legal system of adoption was not criticized by Allah. Many years after, in Medina, the Prophet married Zaid to one of his cousins, his maternal aunt Umayyah, the daughter of Abdul Muttalib. Umayyah is the daughter. Umayyah ibn Abdul Muttalib is the sister of Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, meaning she is the Prophet's Puppi, the Prophet's paternal grandmother. So it was her daughter Zainab bint Jahash who was married to Zaid. Anyway, Zainab is from, of course, the Quraysh, the Abdul Muttalib's granddaughter, and Zaid is a slave, right? So the marriage didn't work out. They had many fights. Zainab always thought herself superior to Zaid. Fast forwarding, Allah then commanded the Prophet to tell Zaid, and his name is mentioned in the Quran. The only companion whose name is mentioned in the Quran, by the way, Allah through the Prophet, told Zaid to divorce Zainab, and told then the Prophet to marry Zainab. So at that time, of course, and marrying your official daughter-in-law is illegal, right? She is part of the household, so you cannot marry her. Even if the son passes away, a father cannot marry the daughter-in-law. But to show that in Islam adoption has no legal value, it does not, just because you say that this person is my son does not mean that he is officially your son and your blood, and hence you cannot marry his former wife. So his entire practical example was done to show that legal adoption has no legal value in Islam. That does not mean that you stop adopting. It means you make it clear to the child when he is of grown age that you are not my actual son or daughter, but we will raise you as one of our own. Allah says they are your brothers in faith. Allah does not say you call them son or child or daughter. You treat them like your brother, but of course a younger brother or younger sister in your own household, and shower them with all of the goodness, the education, the upbringing, the clothing, shelter. No restriction on that. It's just saying that Allah does not want you to falsely claim that this person is my son, because, as I mentioned, right, family, blood ties are sacred. They are sanctity that may not be trespassed, basically. So this is the reason behind it. But anyway, I don't know how I got detracted over there, but I remember now. Anyway, and the Prophet got the first revelation. I was talking about the Prophet's household at that time. He came to his wife Khadija, who took him to her cousin, who was technically Khadija's uncle, Waraka ibn Nawfal, who was a Christian scholar and a Christian monk who had excelled in the Old Testament, the New Testament, so he knew what's going on in terms of what prophets are, what angels are, what divine revelation is. Anyway, Khadija, being the lovely wife she was, took the Prophet to him. And Waraka said, the angel that came to you is the same angel who came to Moses. You are now a messenger, and I wish that I was a younger man so I could support you when your people oppose you and expel you from this city. Now Muhammad at this time, 40 years, he is the most upright man in Makkah. Everybody likes him, everybody loves him, everybody wants to be around him, everybody wants him to conduct business on their part, everybody wants to marry people to Muhammad or his family because they know he is the most upright person. So when he hears this from Waraka, he says, what? Will my people really, oppose me, and will they really expel me from the city? What I'm trying to say is Prophet Muhammad at that time loved Makkah. And the second evidence for this is when he was migrating to Medina, the last thing he did was to go towards the Kaaba and talk to the Kaaba. He was at a hillock and he looked at the Kaaba and he said, okay, Wallahi, by God, I really love you. Of course, he knew that the Kaaba has no inherent value, but still, his heart was attached to the Kaaba. And he said, it pains me to leave you, but this is what the people have. They have left me no choice, so he had to migrate. So anyway, point being, the Prophet always wanted to pray towards Makkah because he knew this is the foundation of Abraham. Abraham is our forefather, and so he wanted to pray towards Makkah. And look what Allah says, okay? So we shall turn you to the Qibla that will please you. That makes sense. The Prophet wanted to pray towards Makkah all his life because he loved the Kaaba, and Allah fulfilled his request. So he said, turn your face towards the sacred mosque. Wherever you are, turn your face towards it. Now look at this line. Those who have been given the book, the Jews and the Christians, know well that this is the truth from their Lord. Meaning they knew that the final Qibla, the final Ummah, the final Prophet will come and he will encourage everybody to now change the Qibla from Jerusalem towards Mecca, towards the Kaaba, where number one, Adam laid the foundations and Abraham came and through Ishmael raised the foundations. That was supposed to be the final Qibla after the final Prophet came. Okay. So so let's read the commentary on this verse. The Holy Prophet knew that the Kaaba was the original Qibla of Ibrahim and revered it as such. In the meantime, the Jews kept carping at the Muslims, saying that if you oppose us and follow Ibrahim, why do you take our Qibla in preference to the Kaaba? It was in expectation of getting a revelation resolving this issue that the Prophet would keep looking up to the heavens. The Kaaba is called a sacred mosque because it is forbidden to kill anything within its boundaries. No place of worship on earth evokes so much reverence. When the directive to change the Qibla was revealed, the Holy Prophet was actually leading the congregational noon prayers in the mosque of Bani Salama in Medina and was halfway through. Immediately, he and his congregation after him turned away from Jerusalem to the Kaaba and completed the prayer in the direction of the new Qibla. This mosque has ever since been given the name Masjid Zu Qiblatain, or the Mosque of the Two Qiblas. So wherever you are traveling or staying in foreign parts or staying at home, face the Kaaba in prayer. And do not bother about the Jewish criticism regarding the change of Qibla because they know from their own book that the last prophet will face towards Jerusalem for a short while, but his permanent Qibla would be in accordance with the tradition of Ibrahim. They therefore know in their hearts and in the original scriptures that this change in Qibla is justified, but their envy and spite obliges them to object. Okay, clear cut. Next verse of the Quran. And even if you bring to those who have been given the book every evidential sign, they will not follow your Qibla, and you are not a follower of their Qibla, nor are they followers of one another's Qibla. And if you were to follow their desires after the knowledge which has come to you, surely you would be amongst the Zalimun, the unjust, Zalimeen rather. So Allah is saying, though they know in their hearts, through their books, through their old teachings, I'm talking about the Jews and the Christians, that the final Qibla will be towards Makkah. Allah is saying, even if you bring to them every evidence, they will still not follow your Qibla, and Allah is saying, you are no longer a follower of their Qiblas. And Allah goes on to say, even amongst themselves, the people of the book, right, the Jews and the Christians. The Jews believe in the Old Testament, the Christians claim to believe in the Old and New Testament, but they still have differing Qiblas, okay? They face towards Jerusalem, definitely, but they have different, like, holy areas in that confinement. The Jews have the Wailing Wall, and the Christians have the sanctuary where Mary used to be, okay? And Allah is saying, do not give in to their objections, and don't just to appease them and please them, reject Allah's authority, which is to face towards Kaaba. Allah is saying that now that knowledge has come to you, O Muhammad, and through Muhammad to us, if we were to follow the claims and desires and commands of anybody else but Allah, we are unjust because the knowledge has come to us, but we are choosing to obey mankind out of expediency, out of fear of material loss or expectation for material gain, and we are in the process disobeying Allah. Now, this is a very, very important verse. Allah says, There was a commentary on the previous verse, but I think I have talked about that, so let's just save some time. Okay. Allah says, those whom we have given the book recognize the Holy Prophet as they recognize their own sons, their own progeny. Certainly, a part of them conceal the truth while they know. Think about this. A mother can, without even seeing the child amongst the crowd, can pinpoint the location of her child based on the child's crying. Okay, just by the way the child cries, even though all fucking children sound the same when they cry. But a mother, through maternal instinct, through Allah's providence, can sense these things. Okay, so Allah is saying, giving that example, that those who have been given the book, Jews and the Christians and all former scriptures, David given the Zabur, the scrolls of Abraham, all of these people come under people of the book. Though those books are of course no longer with us, but they are people of the book, right? Allah is saying, the book is all knowledge that will ever be coming to mankind, stored in Allah's dominion, right? The preserved tablet. When the first thing Allah created, was the pen, and told the pen to write everything that will ever happen. And of course, in accordance with that, also all the knowledge, all the instructions, all the wisdom, aka divine revelation, that was to be sent to mankind, of course, through different people, meaning the messengers, to different people, meaning communities, and of course, throughout the ages of human history. So, Allah is saying they recognize the Prophet as they recognize the Son, and they conceal the truth while they know. Meaning their original scriptures had it, that there's going to be a person coming in this particular place, having these attributes, will propagate a certain message, it will have these themes, his followers will have these qualities, etc. etc. Of course, but though of course they will keep on denying this, right? So Allah is saying the truth is from your Lord, so do not be amongst those who are the doubters. And we will continue with Surah 1, verse 148. Allah goes on to say, and everyone has a direction to which he turns, meaning everybody has a way of thinking which they think is the right way, and they follow that way. Allah says, then compete with one another in doing good deeds. Wherever you may be, Allah will after all eventually bring you all together. Indeed, Allah has power over all things. Now, of course, this is what the entire point of a Qibla or direction is. That Allah is saying, of course, this is a metaphorical example, that everybody has a direction to which he turns. Everybody has their own goals, whether secular or spiritual. Some people want money, some people want authority and power, some people want spiritual peace, mind, some people want the best of this world, luxuries, etc. So Allah has unified the Muslim Ummah in the direction in which they turn in prayer to promote a sense of unity amongst each other and a brotherhood, and a submission to Allah in a congregational manner, right? And which of course breeds humility, breeds love amongst the Muslim Ummah when they are of course praying to the same God in the same direction. Allah is then saying, of course, giving a specific example with a general outline. Allah is saying, everybody has directions to which they turn. Allah is saying, if you want to have a direction which you turn, meaning if you want to have a purpose in life, make it one of competing with one another in doing good deeds. That does not mean that you go out of your way to stop people from doing good deeds so you can have all the rewards. That's not the case. If you see somebody saying kind words to somebody, you say kinder words to that person, right? Because you see that person is doing good, you want to also have the rewards, you pray for that person to get reward, and also you want the own reward. If somebody is feeding 10 people, if you go up to him and say, may Allah bless you, and you tell Allah, I'm feeding 20 people, I want more rewards. So on the day of judgment, Allah has clearly said, in this earthly life there are degrees, there are stations of rank. Allah is saying in the hereafter are more distinguished and more differentiated ranks. Meaning, of course, the more good deeds you have, the better rank you have. Allah is not unjust. Those people who spend more time doing good deeds are of course expecting a greater reward compared to their human counterparts. They want a greater rank in heaven, and Allah will give it according to that. So Allah is saying, if you do want to compete, or if you want a purpose in life, it should be submission to Allah and competing with one another in doing good deeds. Allah is saying, of course, wherever you may be, eventually the end destination is for us, is to be brought together in front of Allah, and Allah is powerful over everything. And Allah goes on to say, and from wherever you set out, turn your face towards the sacred mosque. This is the truth from your Lord, and Allah is not unaware of what you do. So, of course, giving us the directions that whether you are at home, whether you are traveling, whether you are in Makkah, whether you are in Antarctica, the point is to turn towards the sacred mosque in unity of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And this is the truth. Allah is saying this was always mentioned in the previous scriptures that the end Ummah and the final Prophet's followers will face towards Makkah, right? And of course, Allah once again repeats for clarity's sake, once again, and from wherever you set out, turn your face towards the sacred mosque, and wherever you may be, turn your faces towards it, so that people may have no argument against you except those of them that are unjust. Allah says, so fear them not, but fear me, so that I may complete my favor and blessing upon you, and that you may be guided to the straight path. So once again, a reiteration, same thing, right? Wherever you are, turn your face towards Masjid al-Haram, sacred mosque, and the point of this is, wherever you are, turn your face towards it, so that people may have no argument against you. Meaning, of course, a unification, right? Nobody can say that, okay, oh, what about those Muslims who live, in a different part of the world, and some who live in different part of the world, how is that person praying that direction, how is this person praying in that direction? Allah is saying, for unification purposes, pray towards the same direction, so the unbelievers have no chance to, call you out, saying, oh, look, differences amongst you guys, oh, look, but rather a unified, solid body. So Allah is saying, let people say whatever they want to say. The point is to fear Allah and not fear mankind. And by virtue of you fearing Allah, Allah will complete His blessing upon you, and He will guide you to the straight path. And of course, this verse, I don't want to break up a verse and take it out of context, but just focusing on this last line in general context. If you fear Allah, if you keep Him in your mind, you will notice He will bless you and He will guide you in a way which you did not know before. And I swear, of course, if you are not receiving Allah's blessings and if you are not being guided to the straight path, you will never know till you have those things, right? So take your brother's advice, just fear Allah. Fearing Allah does not mean, eventually and realistically it does mean fearing Him, but more than fearing Him, love Him, be in awe of Him, and by virtue of that, give Him His due credit, obey Him, and stay away from the prohibitions, and worship Him and glorify Him, and meditate and think about His power over His dominion, about the beautiful universe He's created, the great coordination of natural events, whether they are the winds, the oceans, evaporation, rainfall, agricultural growth, wildlife, animals, astronomy, sun, stars, moon, gravity. Think about these things. Think about your own self. Psychology, medicine, how beautiful the body is from inside, how every organ system, though looking different, is linked to each other, right? If the heart is not working, the kidney will eventually take an insult. If the kidney is not working, the heart will eventually get an insult. Similarly, the lungs are not working, the heart will get an insult. If the heart is not working, the lungs will get an insult. If the heart is not working, the brain will get an insult. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the biochemistry, the molecular science, right? What we have in our blood, what we have in our organs, how the organs are working. It's absolutely brilliant, right? So think about these things. Stop wasting your time going to work and coming home and then thinking that was your life's purpose. Now you're going to sit home on your couch and watch TV endlessly or scroll to social media thinking you've done your day's job. No, Baba. Of course, as I mentioned, having money, having a material, comfortable life, as long as you are fulfilling the rights of those who have rights upon you financially, no problem. If you have a lot of money, if anything, it's a blessing from Allah. Use it, eat good, dress good, live in a good place, no problem. But all the while knowing that is not your ultimate purpose in life, that this is just Allah's blessing on you. He's given you the mental or physical capabilities to go out and earn money in a way which some people are not given. Not everybody can be a doctor. It requires certain skill set: number one, communication; number two, a comprehensive grasp of science, which is not everybody understands medical science. Okay, it's not easy to understand, but so it's Allah who gives certain people certain abilities so that they can perform well in certain fields of life. Like for example, like a weak man, a person who, for example, has a congenital deformity of his legs or of his arms. He cannot be a laborer, he cannot work in construction, he cannot carry heavy loads. Allah creates everybody in a different way to contribute to society in a different way, so people can utilize one another, so that society can boom and people can make use of one another. Even a doctor needs a cobbler. A cobbler definitely needs a doctor, but a doctor also needs a cobbler, right? So Allah has given different people different abilities so that they can go out there, earn their share of their sustenance according to Allah's decree, and all the while helping society, right? So one person can utilize the other skill set. I hope that makes sense. So let's read the commentary on this verse. Okay, it's a bit long, but I think it's important. So, and Allah says, in this and the previous verse, there is a repetition of the order to turn our faces to the sacred mosque. In the earlier occasion, the order seems to stand by itself. In the next verse, it seems to be linked with the words which follow regarding the objection of unbelievers. That let this be your unvarying practice, so there is an end to the disputations on this issue by people. Every prophet has been given a Qibla by Allah, and it is pointless, therefore, for one people to criticize the Qibla of any other. Firstly, the Jews knew that the Holy Prophet would ultimately have the Kaaba as his Qibla. Had the change to the Kaaba not been made, they would have disclosed their knowledge and claimed that Muhammad had not fulfilled this vital prophecy about the final messenger which they had in their books. Secondly, the idol worshippers of Makkah would have kept objecting why a prophet who claims to follow the tradition of Ibrahim does not accept the house raised by Ibrahim as his Qibla. Nevertheless, even after this change, some hardened characters could persist in carping the idol worshippers, claiming that at last the Holy Prophet had come around to accepting their Qibla. Maybe he would now make further concessions to their creed. And the Jews proclaiming that he had clearly acknowledged the primacy of their Qibla and he had only changed his mind out of envy and pride. So Allah is saying, ignore such perverse people, the commentaries are saying, and remain obedient to Allah's command. So Allah may fulfill His blessing upon you and you may be guided to the straight path. So this Qibla was finally chosen for us so that we can overcome the taunts of our enemies and be fully deserving of our favors. So very important. Okay, so if the change of the Qibla had not occurred, Allah is saying that the Jews in their books, number one, recognized the Holy Prophet as they recognized their own sons, and they also knew that the Prophet who would come towards the end of time would eventually transition the Qibla from Al-Aqsa to Masjid al-Haram. So if this change of Qibla had not occurred, the Jews being the smart, conniving people that they would come out and they would say, look, this is our book. It says that the final prophet must face Kaaba in their final Qibla. So this prophet, meaning Muhammad, is still facing Al-Aqsa, meaning he's not a true prophet. So to counter that, Allah had to change the Qibla. Of course, that was not the reason, but that argument was refuted by this Qibla direction change. Now the question arises, if the Prophet had changed the Qibla in Makkah, right? In Makkah, Allah wanted the Muslims and the unbelievers to be two completely different parties, so that there should be no similarities in beliefs, in actions of any sort. So Allah wanted, if at that time the Muslims were to turn to the Qibla of the Kaaba, and of course I told you the disbelievers, the idol worshippers revered Ibrahim, they revered the Kaaba. So they would think that, oh, Muhammad is giving us concessions. Look, he changed his direction to our Qibla. Maybe we can now tell him that he should propagate, the idol worship that we do in a way to, unify that society, which was of course divided amongst the Muslims and non-Muslims. So of course Allah did everything in His sweet time, and in the process, the Makkans, the disbelievers rather, at that time, were the Qibla to be changed when the Prophet was in Makkah. As I mentioned, they would say this as a sign of weakness, and they would say, Qibla has been changed, why not follow our creed and why not become the idol worshippers like this? And of course, the virtue of changing the Qibla in Medina overcame this problem, and number two is showed to the Jews that look, this is what your book said, this is what Allah has done, so fear Allah and follow the last prophet. But of course, the Jews, just like they are now, they were arrogant back then, they were obstinate in their pride, they didn't want to change their ways and beliefs, so of course they refused to believe the Holy Prophet. And look what Allah says. So we have sent in your midst a messenger from amongst your own selves, who recites to you our revelations and purifies you and teaches you the book and the wisdom and teaches you that which you did not know. So and this verse, of course, just 50 verses back, not even, when Ibrahim and Ismail were raising the foundations of the Kaaba, they made the same dua, right? Oh Allah, accept this from us, and in this community, meaning Makkah and surrounding the Kaaba, raise amongst them, for them, a messenger from amongst their own community, who will recite to them your revelations and who will purify them and teach them of the book and the wisdom. And Allah has answered their prayer by raising up Prophet Muhammad in the midst of the Makkans. So Allah is saying, in response to the previous verse, they said, fear them not, but fear Allah, so He may complete His blessing upon you, so you may be guided aright. So what is a blessing upon you? It is this: He has sent in your midst, at that time, of course, directly but indirectly us, because Allah has preserved the Quran and also the Ahadith. So Allah is saying He has sent you a messenger from among your own self, meaning first a human being, and number two, particularly to the Makkans, who recites to you our revelations. The Quran came to us through Muhammad by his recitation and what he got as a inspiration, and purifies you and teaches you the book and the wisdom and teaches you that which you did not know before. So let's read the commentary on this verse. The commentary says, the Muslims are told that the first and the greatest of favors of Allah on you was the appointment from among you of a prophet who taught you the book and wisdom and purified you, that is to say, guided you both in knowledge as well as practical example, action. And this setting up of the final Qibla is just the completion of the favors of Allah upon you. So Allah wraps up this topic by saying, so remember me and I will remember you. Meaning, be mindful of me and Allah will be mindful of you. And be thankful to me and do not be ungrateful to me. Just these three things. If you implement them, your life will change. Remember Allah through all instances. When you wake up, remember Him, thank Him for giving you life for this day. When you are at work, remember Allah. Even if when you are caught up in the work, it happens to me too, caught up in the stress of the work, you become too fixated on work, stress. Remember Allah then, that okay, Allah is my creator, He has given me this chance to earn my sustenance. Let's not get caught up in the negative thinking. Allah will create a way out. Seek His help in your work and He will give you the help. And be thankful to Allah, to be thankful for all His favors, those that you are aware of, those you are not aware of. Favors you are aware of: your sight, your hearing, your senses, your intellect, the freedom you have, the stability of this earth, the stability of the heavens. When you walk, the earth will not shake, the sky does not fall upon us, the beautiful creation He has created, all of the animals in this world are subjugated to us. The camel, the cow, the birds, the sheep, everything follows us. Have you ever noticed that human beings are the only species that can develop a lasting bond with any of the other species, whether it's monkeys, whether it's killer whales, whether it's dolphins, whether it's cats, whether it's lions, tigers? Have you ever seen a dog and a lion walking together? Have you ever seen even two cats don't get along, but a cat, once is loyal to its master, remains loyal all its life, right? So Allah has given us great favors. So remember Him and don't be ungrateful to Him. How do you become ungrateful? Number one, to be thankful to Allah. Any good that comes your way, whether it's a job promotion or whether you had a child, whether you got married, whether you got any good thing, related to Allah. Allah, it is from you. Allah, thank you. Grant me His blessing. Don't take away from me. To not be ungrateful is if a trial or tribulation is to come upon you, immediately tell Allah, Allah, this has come my way for two reasons. First, as a test from you, so you may test my patience. And number two, because I may have done some ill deed and you are not punishing me, but you are exacting the negative outcome of that deed in this world. So in the hereafter, Allah does not have to question you about it. So if you did something bad here, Allah has two options: either He lets it go and gives you a loose rein and does not call you to account in this world, but in the hereafter He'll be like, okay, I didn't punish you for this sin, now come. And of course, carrying a burden on that day is much worse than carrying a burden in this world. So Allah, out of His mercy, will send some small affliction your way on account of what a couple of sins you may have done, so that on the day of judgment you are pure, you are clean. Allah has, you did a sin, Allah give you the punishment, you are reprieved. Similarly, somebody who is a criminal and he escapes, he will not escape Allah. On a day of judgment, Allah will punish him. However, if somebody, is a prisoner and they say, this is my wrongdoing, I agree to it, I confess to it, I will go to jail, I'll do the time. When he comes out, according to Islam, that means guilt-free. Allow him to come back to society as a normal person, give him a job, give him a family, everything. He has done his part, he has paid his penance, he is cleared from his sin. Just a sidetrack, I hope that makes sense. And yeah, so of course we have gone 5 minutes over. I apologize, my dear brothers and dear sisters. You will continue inshallah the next episode with verse 153. A great part of Surah Al-Baqarah is coming. One of the most beautiful parts of the Quran is coming up next. So see you soon, and have a great weekend.